Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today, finally going to talk about hero bans and the hero ban system and my thoughts on it because it's an interesting system and a good system, or bad system, depending on who you ask. But before we get into that, I want to talk about one thing in particular, and that is my video from yesterday. Yesterday I talked about free agency moves, roster updates, stuff like that, things that I'd like to see potentially change, teams that I'd like to see make moves, players who I'd like to see added to rosters, stuff like that, because the deadline for the teams to make those moves was next Monday, the 15th of June. It was announced yesterday that the deadline would be pushed back to July 31st, so teams will have more time to make those moves. I thought that was going to happen, but they hadn't announced it yet, so I had just decided to make the video on it because I thought it'd be interesting, and there was some other stuff that I wanted to talk about, such as those rumors and stuff like New York adding Hacksaw and Sparkle becoming 18. I want to talk about that kind of stuff before my picks video on Friday. So it doesn't really change much in terms of my opinions. I still don't think many teams are going to be bringing in non-North American-based players, or players who have at least been based in North America at some point in time. Fissure could still get signed. Sominsu could still get signed, but beyond them, I don't expect many unless players can somehow get a visa very, very quickly. Most teams that I think would add players that are already in North America. The one thing that I think does change is a number of teams like the Gladiators, the Defiant, the Uprising, the Valiant, some of your middle-of-the-table teams to low-table teams that have mixed rosters, or at least just non-Korean rosters, might make moves here in a few weeks, as opposed to making them now, because they have more time to see where their team is at over the next few weeks and adjust accordingly. So maybe more teams make a couple moves here and there, but for the most part, I don't think that is going to be the case. So let's jump into the main topic today, which is the hero bans system. Yesterday, the Overwatch League and the Overwatch team announced some major changes to the hero pools system that will change the way we see the hero pools system going forward. On the Overwatch side, just the game itself, there was a forum post by Molly Fender, which I will link to in the description down below, where she said, "We have a new update to share regarding hero pools. We've been listening to feedback and constantly iterating on the feature behind the scenes. We initially implemented hero pools to address issues with stagnating metas and to keep matchups exciting and fresh. However, we found that the introduction of experimental card and increased hero balance updates has helped us work towards a healthy, changing meta in competitive play without needing to disable heroes. Going forward, we've decided to make the following changes to hero pools starting immediately. Hero pools will be removed indefinitely from competitive play with no tentative date for re-implementation." So hero pools in your games, your ranked games, are gone. They're not gone necessarily forever. They are right now suspended, removed indefinitely. If they feel like there are things going wrong with the game and that the meta isn't changing the way they would hope, then they will look to bring them back, presumably, based on what they're saying. But right now, hero pools are gone in competitive play, which I think is the best move. They were only a thing at the top anyway recently. At that point in time, when they announced that, I said you should just get rid of them entirely, and they finally did. And I think that's the best move. I don't think hero pools worked the way that they wanted them to. I think in a way they did, because it was like, oh, heroes, they're not playable. Like, that's cool. Like, do you not want to play Orisa for a week? That's fine. But it's also like, do you not want to play Genji for a week? Oh, actually, I kind of would like to play Genji for a week. That would be cool. Too bad you can't play Genji for a week. And it's like, okay, well, thank you. I was really hoping I would play some Genji, but I guess not. Now it's just gone. I think the game is getting balanced enough that you don't need them. And I think that the only real place that we would need anything of the sort anyway was at the very, very top. There is no meta when you're at the bottom. And even then, with the addition coming soon of open queue being its own queuing thing within competitive, there was no reason to keep hero pools around. I don't see hero pools ever coming back, and I think that is a good thing. Hero pools are still a thing in the Overwatch League, however, and I want to talk about them a little bit, and then I want to transition that into talking about the hero bans system. Hero pools have some new rules that I will go over here, and this is from an Overwatch League news article, which I will also link in the description down below. As they say, with the calendar set for the rest of the regular season, we are adjusting hero pools a final time for the 2020 season after consulting with OWL teams and players, which means they are not doing any changes beyond this. This is their final change. Hero pools in OWL will now last 2 weeks before rotating, and after each 2-week hero pool period, the next 2 weeks, including the tournament matches, will be played with no hero pool in effect. As they say here, the next hero pool with Echo, Sombra, Diva, and Brigitte removed will be in effect for weeks 19 and 20 of the Summer Showdown qualifier matches. That is this upcoming weekend, the weekend of the 13th, and the following weekend, the weekend of the 20th of June, of course. Week 21 will be the same as the tournament, played with no hero pool in effect, so that is the week of June 27th. The same format will be used for the third regular season tournament and qualifier matches, with a new hero pool in effect for 2 weeks of qualifiers, then no hero pool for the third week and tournament matches. And as I say, the final 2 weeks of the regular season schedule will also operate under a single hero pool. The 2020 playoffs, like the tournaments, will be played without a hero pool. So, there is no more hero pool in tournaments again, of course, but also the week before the tournaments, there will be no hero pools as well, which I think is interesting. They close off here saying Overwatch League hero pools will continue to be determined by an algorithm-driven system that compiles hero play rates from Overwatch League matches from the preceding 2 weeks. Heroes with play rates above a certain threshold will be eligible to be removed. The higher their play rate, the more likely they are to be removed. So, the 2-week hero pools at this point in time are interesting. I think that it is really at a point now where I guess they consulted the teams, and the teams were fine with hero pools, but they wanted hero pools for 2 weeks instead of just 1 week. And I think for the players and for the teams, that's a lot better, because you'll get more time, at least, to see the matches develop more. And you'll see things develop in a different way, where now the way you can look at it and say, we know that we're going to have at least 2 weeks of no hero pools, right? And we can focus on finding what's best for those 2 weeks when we're having the week right before the tournament and the tournament itself. Work towards that goal and kind of find ways to sub in heroes in the other 2 weeks. And I think that makes it a little bit better, because in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the way the hero pools are going to be the entire time. So I think that's smart. But at the end of the day, I just think that they should just get rid of hero pools by the end of the season. I said, personally, that by the end of June, I tweeted out that hero pools would be gone entirely, and I'd say I was correct. I'd say that I was accurate with that statement. So, just saying. But with hero pools now basically being gone, it opens up the way for the conversation around hero bans. And hero bans are a very interesting system. And in fact, I thought they were very interesting systems, specifically with the way they were done in the Lunatic High and Runaway show match. Now, if you didn't watch it, I will explain the way it worked. Essentially, the way that the system worked was each team picked 4 heroes that the other team could not pick. The hero pools were separate for each team. So if Lunatic High, for example, picked Brigitte and Runaway picked Lucio, that meant that Runaway could play Lucio, but Lunatic High could not, and Lunatic High could play Brigitte, but Runaway could not. And one of my favorite parts of the system, something that I thought was genuinely good about it, was as the series went on, you could remove bans. So, in a series that is first to 3, after the second map, both teams could remove 1 ban. And then if there was another map after that, they could remove another ban, and so on and so on. And that way you get to a point where in a prolonged series, you get to the end of it where you don't have any bans at all, and there's obviously something to kind of play around with there. Now, my one thing with that I want to say is that if they were to do that, that would heavily favor your better teams. Better teams would benefit from that, and you would get fewer upsets and fewer major kind of defeats. Because if a series went on longer, like we saw with the Shock playing the Mayhem were able to perform at a high level when it came to the earlier maps, so they were able to pick the maps that they wanted for the way that they wanted to play. It's somewhat the same thing now, where as a series progresses, teams can start to say, okay, we need to do better bans that favor us, and we can pull away heroes that we're struggling playing as, and we can make it now where we can see the bans as we need to, and as they ban the heroes for us, we can slowly roll back the ones we need that are more important, right? Like if you're the Florida Mayhem, your opponent's going to ban Tracer because Yaki's so good on Tracer. And once it gets to map 3, you can say we want to be able to play Tracer right here, right now. We want to bring back Tracer because Tracer is our, kind of our win condition, and that can really help turn the tide for the team. But at the same time, they have to go 3 maps without Tracer or 2 maps without Tracer. So that is where I think that this system is interesting. And when at first I thought the hero ban system would be worse than the hero pools, I now do not think that's the case. I don't want to see a hero ban system in competitive play and on the ladder when you go onto the Overwatch client to play the game. I don't want to see hero bans because I don't think it would work very well. I think it would take too long, and at the end of the day, when you get on the game, I think that a hero ban system is just kind of it defeats kind of the purpose of playing. Like if I want to play Genji, or I want to play McCree, or I want to play Moira, or I want to play Lucio, or I want to play Winston. I want to play those heroes, and if I queue up as a tank specifically to play Winston, and they ban Winston, well, now I'm stuck playing tank, and I don't want to be playing that hero. And that's obviously what Jeff Kaplan said with the system. And you may say, well, you could always just play quick play for that, or you could always just play competitive open queue for that. But if I want to better my play as a Winston in actual competitive play and see how I can improve when I'm playing against really good opponents who are taking the game seriously, ideally, I am doing that in competitive play. So I think a hero pick system would only work if it were in an actual league system, right? Like an actual official pro level system. I don't think it would work outside of that. And I think there are things about it that you'd have to change based on what we saw from the Runaway Lunatic High match, or not. You could try them and see if they work or not. You could try the original system that they use and see if it works or not. But as a whole, I think there's some interesting stuff to discuss. One, there's a discussion about whether or not there should be 2 separate ban pools or 1 joint ban pool. And if there is counterplay. If you're going to have a system where you can remove bans as the series progresses, I like the idea better of having 2 ban pools. But if you want to just keep bans that don't go away at all throughout the series, I think that it's better to have 1 like non changing ban pool that doesn't go away throughout the series. So if you ban 4 heroes for the series, they're banned for the whole series. They don't go away if it's for one shared pool between the two teams. I think the 2 pools is a better system. And I jump back and forth on this because at first I thought the 1 pool would be a better system because there's kind of counterplay to it. If you're a team like the San Francisco Shock where you know you're really good on Lucio and you're playing up against another team who maybe isn't as good on Lucio as you, you know you want to have Lucio, but maybe you're up against the Florida Mayhem and they have a really good Tracer. And you, as the Shock, are the team that gets the first option for ban. And you can say, well, we know they're really good on the Tracer. So we could use our ban on them to ban the Tracer, but then they are going to ban the Lucio potentially, or the Baptiste. So do we instead, say we're going to ban Brigitte so that we don't have to worry about that? And then the Brigitte can't enable the Tracer, and we guarantee that we have our Lucio and Baptiste. So there's the counterplay in that way, but I think ultimately the better system is actually better when you have 2 separate pools and the teams can choose which heroes they want back as the series progresses. But I don't know. I'm not someone who watches a lot of League of Legends, so I don't see the ban system in action often. But I also think that at the end of the day, the thing that the game needs before a hero ban system I think will truly succeed is more heroes. If there were more heroes that were somewhat similar, I think that there would be a much more obvious need for a ban system, or a much more easily implementable ban system. Because if there is a hero who does the same thing Reinhardt does, or at least a similar thing that Reinhardt does, maybe not as well as Reinhardt does it, but well enough that you can get by with it, well, then I think that makes the ban system not as bad. But with the amount of heroes we have, especially in the tanks and supports, where there's really not that many, one being banned changes a lot of things, right? Going into next week of the Overwatch League, or this upcoming weekend, you have no Diva, no Brig. Like, that's pretty big, especially the no Diva. Like, that's huge. That changes so much for the week, and that changes the types of things that you're going to see. And that's why part of me thinks that 2-week bans are not as smart in general as opposed to a hero ban system. Because if you have a hero ban system, you're likely going to see bans that are specific to teams, and you'll have to see teams evolve around specific heroes likely not being playable often for them, but knowing that on certain maps later on, right? Like, if you know that the 3rd map in the series is going to be Hanamura, say, right? And you have a very specific Hanamura strat, and there's one hero that you know you need, and they get banned, well, you know that by Hanamura you can get that hero back. So it's not that big of a deal if they're banned for the first 2 maps, if you have compositions that you can rely on that don't need that hero. And it allows for very specific map strategies, and it allows you to definitely have things that you can keep. They don't have to change throughout the season, or at least throughout the month or whatever. Because you can look into the future and say, we know that at least on this map, we can run this strategy guaranteed. On this map, we can likely run this strategy guaranteed, unless they happen to ban these heroes or these heroes, but we can have ways to change it up and make it work. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but in my mind, it makes at least some sense. But I'd love to hear your opinions on hero pools as well, so if you have any thoughts on them, and hero bans more actually, leave those in the comments down below. If this video was enjoyable, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. And that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.